Thank you very much, Leo. The discussion is open. So, here I have the microphone. Yes, please. We just have to. Yeah.
Thanks very much for the talks. Ivana, I had a question for you. Just to pick up on the last statement that you made apropos of Rancière and this idea that there are different kinds of police. So I understand that he wants to sort of maybe separate himself from more a Gamben type analysis, which sees everything that's not politics as just uniformly bad or so. So he emphasizes that, you know, I mean, today, in today's society, despite sort of some rather ugly political phenomena and so on, it's clear that materially we're a lot better off than the 19th century or even 50 years ago. Nonetheless, police, like, is always a question of policing titles, right? Policing titles to govern, to participate in politics. So that once you have a police, it is a police nonetheless. You do exclude politics. I understood your emphasis on this kind of nicer police as a way of saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, like we need some way of holding on to, say, forms of organization that are nicer than other forms of organization, if I'm right. But why can't you sort of turn the analysis around? Because something else that Rancière says is that and perhaps what's more interesting is when there's a state of society which allows for, I don't know if allow for would be the right word, but where there's more possibility of different forms of dissensus from emerging. You know, I don't know, some kind of structure that maybe is even capable of undoing itself or something like that, I'm not sure. But in any case, like, wouldn't it be preferable to say, okay, there's always police and politics, they're always together in some way, because politics is always about interrupting police, precisely. But where there's more and more forms of interruption of some kind of political organization, isn't that something to focus on more? And wouldn't that, seeing things in that way, wouldn't that maybe change the analysis, your analysis?
I'm not sure if I got you right, because I will answer to that what you mentioned first. The place of politics and police in Rancière's work. I think, of course, he is critical of police, but I think we don't read his works rightly if we are completely, if we think that police is non-existent altogether, or that he brackets the possibility of police altogether from his theoretical construction, because the very idea of democracy and the very idea of his very idea of emancipation implies some kind of regime. Today it would be liberal democracy, which has transferred or transmuted to post-democracy, and he was before he was one of the first critics who referred to that. This frame of liberal democracy is always there when the Palatine or Aventin story happens. That means that those who participate or create an event, they have to refer to something which is already there, but it is not practiced or which is not still realized. So I think this model of some kind of regime is implied, but not, so to say, it's somehow on the margin of Rancière's discussions. But now I don't think I understood your second part of the question about these dynamics of. Was it about the dynamics of?
Yeah, I mean, you can have like a perfectly well-functioning state system which cares for everybody's material needs and so on, but which nonetheless excludes people from politics. I mean, they can be, could be potentially completely benevolent in some sense, but which nonetheless institutes hierarchical divisions between technical labor, manual labor, between, those kinds of things which I think, in the Austro-Hungarian, Austro-Marxist exercise, you were looking at the way in which they're trying to undo those things, right? But if you have like a completely benevolent police, like you were sketching, as a positive thing, I think, why can't you just turn it around and say, basically, okay, you always have some kind of regime, some kind of rule, but the point is to disrupt it as much as possible.
Yes, I think...
and in that kind of regime, which perhaps has cracks open.
Let's name it a dynamic regime. The dynamic that allows, or a dynamic regime that allows for these interruptions. That means that its arche is not fixed once and for all times, but its arcade, or this fundament of the regime, would be the possibility of interruption, the possibility of negotiation also, but the possibility of allowing for those who are outside to dynamize the regime. And when I say that, I think I'm still staying in Rancière's, in his framework. I think when we draw the distinction between police and politics in such a finite way, or so to say, when we say there is always this distinction, I think there exists a kind of danger to freeze the distinction and to forget about the framework that allows for the dynamization of the whole thing altogether. Is that an answer?
Yeah, I agree with you. But maybe we can talk about it sort of later.
Yeah, Jacques Rancière left. You left, yeah.
First, a general remark. I don't want to intervene. To say after the end of a talk, yes, you got the point, or did not get the point, of course. So I intervene sometime when it happens, in the conversation. But I don't want to be the person who is judging, at the end of any talk, whether it is good or not. Not being so. Okay. Now regarding, just one thing about police and politics. I'll always say police and politics are, two patterns of distribution of the sensible, and perhaps what is specific to politics is that, beyond the management, of groups, of human beings, of goods, the circulation of goods, etc., there is a symbolization, the symbolization of a subject, named the people and constituted as, the collective of those who have an equal capacity. So this is in a way, it's a distinction, between two ways of configuring a community. But of course, I always said there is nowhere, or almost nowhere, pure politics and pure police. So the point is not simply that police can allow more or less politics. However, we have a certain combination of police and politics, which allows or doesn't allow, for novelty or for kind of political, advance. This is the first point. And the second point is, that really police doesn't mean institution. So for me, it's important, to recall it. So I never said that an institution or a party or a government, is only doing policy, and that politics is only, what is done by insurrection and so on. So I think it's just a remark, about on this point, which I think is very important. So, what I think interesting, in your talk, you are in the case, of an institution, which tries to overcome what was precisely the kind of the separation between the two avant-gardes, in Soviet Union. What I described yesterday is there is an idea of artistic so-called avant-garde, that they can, constitute, in a sensory way, the forms of a new life. And of course, for the Communist Party, this is nonsense. So there is this opposition between two forms of avant-garde, in a way, or two forms of revolution, And of course, what we describe is an attempt, to put together, in a way, the logic of a political revolution and the logic of an aesthetical revolution. So just a comment. As I have the microphone, I take advantage of it just to say something about Eugène Sue, well, the problem, you quote, you make this quote, from the beginning of the Mystère de Paris, that the barbarians are among us. The barbarians are among us. Well, of course, it was a kind of aesthetic position at the same time, because Balzac and Dumas, they all say the same thing, meaning, it is no use, to go to the forest, of America, the wild world is here, so Paris also, can be viewed as a kind of jungle, So it's, at the same time, it's a kind of aesthetic position, with no political presupposition, but at the same time, the sentence, the barbarians are among us, was very famous at that very moment, because it had been pronounced, well, in a reactionary newspapers, by a representative of the reaction, whose name was Baron Dupin, After the Lyon insurrection in 1831, he wrote a very famous article, the barbarians are among us, in the suburbs in our fabric, in the suburbs of our town, etc., etc. And the reaction, the reaction of all, militant workers, was a reaction against an insult, saying we are not barbarians. We are not barbarians. We are men, just as you are, Which was not simply, I think, a kind of response, affirmation, that we are decent people. No, I think precisely, the logic of emancipation was the logic, of people trying to deny this separation, between two worlds, And so, well, in a way, to the extent, that Eugène Sue, maintains this barrier, we can say. Either, it is strictly, a poetical view, but if it is a political assertion, it is certainly a reactionary assertion, from the point of view of the workers, not only from the point of view of Marx.
¿Vas a comentar? To have,
Yes, thank you for this. I completely agree with you, of course. What I stressed is that C, of course, is not a reactionary, even if he's publishing in Journal de Débat. He is a dandy. And next thing, there was not place to say everything, of course, but you know that Marx, in edit forward to his 18th Brumaire in 1969, he says that only two persons wrote something substantial about the failure of revolution of 1848. One was Victor Hugo, and another was Proudhon. And yeah, but it's funny that in reality, Eugène Sue wrote his last novel, Mysteries of People, as his response against Katzenjammer, the expression of Marx. This novel, A Livraison, was written from the point of view that in spite of all this, we have to struggle and fight again. So it was different from the Mysteries of Paris. It was written from the position of proletariat. So it's a kind of progress in C, and I think that is of course also interesting, as it is interesting that in the United States, at the beginning of the 20th century, the leader of trade unions and Socialist Party, Daniel De Leon, translated the whole last Seuss novel because it was the only historical approach to the existence of those who are invisible.
Okay, thank you, Len.
And I just, thank you for the comment, and I agree, I didn't remember about the essential distinction between politics and police, of course. My aim was actually to show that, or as I read it, as I can see from what I've read about Austro-Marxism, that they actually implemented some kind of two-leveled politics. The politics of hybridity was, so to say, the first level. It was this what was allowed for, this level of possible disruptions. But this area of disruptions and of collage of different social positions was enabled by this larger frame, so to say, and this was a politics of antagonism. So, and this was, this was police then, yes. So, in philosophical or theoretical observations of Otto Neurath, for example, where he speaks of the amalgamation of in educational practice, for example, of proletarian children and bourgeois children, he says we have to put them together. We have to conjoin these disparities, social disparities. But this will happen only if we establish schools. This is just a very simple example of this, what I would call two-leveled politics, or politics and police. Police that allows for a Rancière way of politics. Yes.
Okay. We will finish this morning parts of our conference here. So now it's time for our lunch break. We will meet again at 3 p.m. Please be punctual, because we will start punctually. So thanks a lot for